in the city of Chernovitz, life once felt permanent, a Jewish community built on culture, faith, and family. But history does not arrive with a single knock. It begins with words, headlines that shift, neighbors who grow silent as anti-Semitism hardens into law, rights are stripped away, movement restricted, livelihoods erased. For Yeti Finkelthal, the threat is not political, it is personal. It lives in the face of her daughter, in every decision about what to say and what to hide. When deportations begin under Nazi rule, motherhood becomes an act of resistance. Survival demands impossible choices. Bright One is not the story of distant history. It is the story of a mother fighting to preserve love, identity, and hope in a world determined to extinguish them. Because remembrance is not passive, it is an act of courage.
Your novel doesn't begin with war, it begins with atmosphere. What interests you about the moment before history names what's happening?
Well, I'm a very visual person. So my background is in visual arts. So for me, it's very important to sort of set the scene of what things look like before I kind of go into the trials and tribulations of what the World War I and the effects of it were.
So it's set in Romania, or today the Ukraine. In Chernovitz.
Yes.
Was that your ancestral home?
Great grandparents and my grandmother lived there right up until before Hitler came to power. My great grandmother was one of 9 children, and I do write about them in the Bright One novel, in my debut novel. Mm-hmm. She had to make some really very hard decisions and had to make some really big sacrifices in order for our family line to actually survive. And obviously her choices did work. Otherwise I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
Okay. So Chernovitz was once described as a cosmopolitan cultural center at the time. What does it mean to write about a world that many readers have never heard of? And what was erased?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. Also extremely difficult to answer. I've never actually been there myself, but at the time in the 1920s, it was also referred to as Little Vienna. It was an extremely large Jewish population at the time, booming city. Business was really starting to pick up after World War I. And the Jewish community was thriving. There were theaters and dance companies and all sorts of really beautiful things happening culturally. And all of that was wiped out completely. Right after World War II started, there was a very big Romanization of Romania where the Jews basically lost all of their rights overnight. They were forced to give up their businesses and give them to Romania. They were forced to close their businesses, and they were basically not even given rights to their residential life. They were stripped of everything.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like this novel is very dear to your heart and very close. Was it difficult to write it in an objective way? Find that difficult to write?
So for me, it was very emotional, and I did find myself crying more times than I probably will ever admit during the actual writing process. Most of this book, I had to do a lot of historical research to make sure that it was accurate. I did not know any of the family members that I wrote about, with the exception of my grandmother. So a lot of it was made up. A lot of it was oral histories from my uncle and my father to sort of give me at least an idea of what family life was like for the Finkeltals. That is my ancestors. When the Romanian government decided that Czernowitz was no longer going to have a Jewish community, they forced everybody to go and live in a ghetto.
Yeah.
And all of that was taken away. They were forced out of their family home that was in the family for, hundreds of years.
Talking about your grandmother, when you write your great grandmother into fiction, are you preserving it, or are you interpreting?
So I'm probably a little bit of both. With the information that I was able to obtain from my dad and my uncle, they were able to tell me stories that they heard growing up. And then I would say, percentage-wise, I would say most of it is fictionalized.
I would find that very, very difficult to write about, such a sad time.
Yeah. Yes, it definitely was very difficult.
Yeah, especially when it's so close. So is there a difference between fear announced publicly and fear felt privately? How does Jetty's experience, how does she experience that tension?
That is where the fictional part of the writing comes into. So I had to basically step inside her shoes and imagine what it would have felt like if I were there and I was experiencing what she was experiencing. Because I have never experienced anything like what she went through. This is an extremely emotional book. And I know that some of my readers have told me that they have had to have a box of tissues next to them while reading. I know I did when I was writing it. A lot of it was very emotional for myself as well. So I think that, there is a difference between public and private, but I think that in the writing process, it was important for her to still stay strong in public, but behind closed doors, I was able to portray how emotionally devastating it was for her.
I was taught to be prepared, to be loyal, to do what was right even when it was hard. In 1940, that belief carried me into enemy territory. I became someone else. I wore their uniform, learned their customs, spoke their words. Every day I worked to survive, and every night I wondered what that survival was costing me. Orders were simple: fit in or die.
Through writing the novel, do you believe you actually got to know your great-grandmother?
Yes, I do. And I also believe I got to know my grandmother a little bit better as well.
Okay.
I think that, growing up, she never really discussed any of the journeys that she went through and any of the, generational turmoil that she went through, having, had to leave her home when she was very young and not be able to bring her family members with her. So she was basically pushed out of her home at a very young age and had to grow up immediately. And she never talked about it. So learning about what she went through was really difficult for me and my family, who have read the book, obviously, but it's also given a lot of my family members a much better understanding for what she went through.
Yeah.
She was very difficult at times. And with generational trauma, it makes a lot more sense, being, fourth, fifth generation of persecution of the Jews. It's no wonder, my family has had a lot of anxiety and, the behaviors of what's passed down from generation to generation doesn't really get enough recognition. And it's just kind of overlooked. And that was another reason why I decided to start writing this series of books, because it'll, in my opinion, I believe that it will be able to open the eyes of other people that have had this sort of persecution done to them and their families and ancestors.
Yeah, and let's face it, it still happens today.
Yes, absolutely. And that generational trauma isn't recognized. So a lot of
Yeah.
times people don't even really understand what's happening to them or why they do certain things. And, if one story can help them, then maybe I'm the one to be the person to do it.
Do you think that motherhood in a novel is an act of resistance?
Yes, it could be an act of resistance for sure. Mostly because of the time and that part of history. If Yeti didn't make the decision to, release her daughter from staying in Romania at the time, I think things would have been a lot worse for my grandmother.
Yeah.
And maybe even death. Like that might have been the demise of the family completely.
Yeah, terrible.
And then when I talk to people about my book, I end up hearing stories, so many people all over the world. I have been in other countries talking about my book as well. And every single person that I talk to has some sort of story about someone they knew or someone they worked with or an ancestor or somebody, a grandmother, an uncle. And a lot of those stories, these people are going to have to be careful, will end up in my books because I feel like they're important enough that that is part of history. I think also, to answer your question, I found that a lot of times history doesn't really talk about the personal experiences that happen. And by having these Q&A sessions with my readers, I've been able to learn a little bit more about their experiences and their family's experiences. And it becomes firsthand knowledge as opposed to just reading about it in a book.
He crossed the Atlantic chasing opportunity, not suspicion. In the wilds of colonial America, a young Scot joins a surveying expedition to draw a line that will shape history. But when a man is found dead, the land turns hostile, trust fractures, and Angus Mackay finds himself standing on the wrong side of the truth. In a world where borders are dangerous and innocence is easily lost, how do you prove yourself when death is already on the line?
Trauma that, do you think it travels through the generations?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. Absolutely.
Yeah. At what point did you, when you were writing the story, did you shift from research to something more personal?
I think that I started writing it as more of a personal development of my grandmother as opposed to a historical fiction. Interestingly enough, this book, Bright One, the third to last chapter was actually originally going to be the first chapter. But when I started to figure out the factual parts of what happened to my grandmother, I realized I had to start, many, many years earlier before she was actually born, with the history part of leading up to when she was actually forced to leave the house. So it sort of ended up being a backwards way to write the book, but it is much more powerful and historically accurate, and it's just a much stronger story now than it was when I first started writing it.
Yeah. Was it healing?
So I think it was a little bit cathartic. I wish that I had, sort of spent more time with my grandmother when she was alive.
Yeah.
I feel like if she were to read my book now, I think she would just be so incredibly proud. The story is just such a beautiful, heartbreaking, experience. And I think that for me, it was healing, but it was also very difficult at the same time.
And I mean, really, it's a legacy, isn't it? It's a legacy that's always going to be there for your family and for, I suppose, really, it's a legacy for the whole nation.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you brought that up.
So obviously it's going to be one of a series.
Yes.
Yeah. How many novels in the series do you think?
So that's very interesting. So right now I have Bright One is the first novel that's been published. The second one is called Golden Flight. That one actually the manuscript went to the publisher on Sunday, this past
Wow.
Sunday. That the release date of the second book, Golden Flight, is July 14th. So that one is already in production.
Wow.
And then I have an additional 4 manuscripts for this series. But I have also started, and those are complete. They're just not edited yet.
You're a machine.
And then
when I speak to authors that write novels that have emotional weight like yours, I sort of like, I suppose I think about My Humanity, and it seems that in 100 years, we haven't changed. Nothing's changed. We haven't improved as a species, and that's sort of like that seems to be a reoccurring theme that comes through some of these author interviews. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a really, really strong and valid point. I mean, Bright One takes place in an area where it's war torn right now. We can't go visit the Ukraine, which is horrible. I mean, I can't even go see where my ancestors were living, even, after World War II, even during World War I. It's just as if history repeats itself over and over again, and we don't learn from it. Which is horrible.
So in writing about anti-Semitism, how careful were you about drawing parallels or not drawing them to the present?
Yeah, so I really struggled with that, Paul. It really was very hard for me to not want to just dive into how similar history was then and what's happening now. So I basically stuck to the factual historical events that happened in the novels, but I also used my emotional writing to portray what is happening now to parallel what was happening then.
Okay, so this part of the interviews is one of my favorite parts, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you 10 quick fire questions.
Oh no.
Right, and so you answer them with one or two word answers. The first thing that comes to your mind, right? So it's a little bit lighter than some of the things that we've discussed already.
That's
right?
like saying don't think about ice cream. Now you are.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question: coffee or tea while writing?
Oh, hot cocoa first thing in the morning every day.
Hot cocoa.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that the caffeine in the chocolate sort of, wakes me up right away. And I don't drink caffeinated beverages other than the hot cocoa. So, but I do either or coffee, tea, but hot cocoa in the morning is my go-to.
With marshmallows or without?
No, without.
Oh.
I'm vegan, so
Okay.
so I try not to do any harm to any animals at all.
Okay. Letters or photographs, which moved you more?
Oh my gosh, that's I would say photographs first because they're visual. The letters were difficult for me because I had to have most of them translated. I don't have all of them translated yet. So the photographs, I was able to sort of use that as like an emotional sounding board to just get the stories going.
Yeah. One word that defines Yeti.
Courage.
One word that defines Berta.
That one's hard. Brilliant. She was very smart.
Okay. Silence or confrontation, which shapes this novel more?
Silence.
Archive research or emotional intuition?
Emotional intuition.
Which scene was hardest to write?
I think the scene with the wedding, and right after that, after the wedding.
Which scene surprised you?
The devastation of what happened during the Spanish flu.
Okay. If Yeti could speak to readers today, what single sentence would she say?
Never give up and always fight for what you want.
Wonderful, wonderful. Look, Lisa Joy, it sounds like an absolutely incredible book. And for such a, I suppose, sad book, you're such a bubbly, fun person to have on the show.
Thank you.
I mean, but based on your persona, I wouldn't think that you'd write such a sad book, but obviously it's very important to you. You said it
Yes.
was you said it was healing. You've got another 10 books coming
Yeah,
out
coming.
in the series. And I'm sure that the series and Bright One is going to resonate with very, very many people.
I hope so. That's
Yeah.
the whole entire point of this.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
I hope so.
And really, I suppose your writing is representing a whole nation. And
I think it's representing an entire world.
congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's been lovely to have you on the show.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
And I wish you the very, very best with Bright One. And
Thank you.
I hope that we can get together again sometime.
Oh, we will. We will. I can't wait to do this again for Golden Flight. You'll probably see me in about 6 months.
Okay.